Jimbo! Hey, I have a question for you. Do you like fish sticks? If you do, then oh boy, is this video for you. Oh my god, has this video been begged for? And I mean screamed and cried and begged for. And for good reason. Because this character is he's just delightful. There's truly not much, if anything at all, bad to say about him. This guy is the walking embodiment of the cool dad, the chill dad, and the loving dad. The father you've always wanted and the father I've always wanted as well. Dad, if you're watching this, love you lots, but I'm afraid you're just not a big blue fishman. Sorry, we can't all be perfect. Unless you're Jinbe, of course, then you're perfect. That's right, my lovely little viewers. Today is the day that we finally talk about the #1 Dilf Daddy fishman sailing on the seas. He's big, he's blue, and he will not kill you. The first son of the sea and the newest Straw Hat pirate added to a happy, wacky family. It's Jinbe! Gosh, isn't this man just dandy? He's such a shape, especially of the friend variety. I feel it's impossible to look at Jinbe and not smile. I want to hug him so bad. He's also technically, canonically, and objectively a handsome man.
お前か、なぜ俺たちを助けてくれたんだ。
色男の頼みは断れないの。
Hey, if Robin said it, I ain't about to dispute it. Lovely shape and design aside, there is tons to love about Jinbe. If I'm to be completely honest, he was a bit of a sleeper favorite of mine. He was certainly around Luffy during his toughest times. And he provided a lot of care, light, and support within the Marineford arc. But with everything else going on, he was certainly a character not everyone lingered on for too long. But with Jinbe's introduction to actual introduction to return to re-return to re-re-return, this man has been the biggest fish stick tease in terms of becoming a Straw Hat. It was no doubt that Oda seemed very fond of him, considering how much Jinbe just happened to be around. And his final and eventual joining of the crew took years in the making. After all, the very first time his name was dropped was all the way back in chapter 69. Nice! But yes, he was name dropped all the way back in chapter 69, just for Jinbe to finally make his grand entrance in chapter 528. From the 69th chapter's release in 1998 to the 528th chapter's release in 2009, that's over 10 years. Oda was cooking with this one. And initially, I wasn't sure how much there really was to talk about with Jinbe. We haven't exactly seen Jinbe in his childhood, nor have we seen him grow up. So I felt there was a lot of substance missing. But silly me, that is very untrue. Because, my friends, sometimes a person's story can start years into adulthood. Sometimes one can float on the same current for 30 years of their life, just to encounter something that changes their perspective and their selves completely. And that's what Jinbe's story is. A jaded adult living in a dark world, with no hope nor will until everything is flipped with what the world shows him. In our current day, Jinbe is a man of pride, a man of his word, and a man of honor. And we'll be taking a dive into Jinbe's mindset and why his character has become what it is today. But before we splash with the fishes, it's sponsor time! While we cannot all be pirates in our current day and age, we can still be pirates online, and we can do that safely with Atlas VPN. If you're not a tech nerd like me and have no idea what a VPN is, a VPN makes it so all your internet searches, browsing, and history is completely protected. It's sure to hide your IP address and it keeps you safe from spying, especially from the pesky FBI agent in your computer who's watching you look up Zoro's big fat boobies as we speak. But Atlas VPN isn't just a VPN, it also protects you from pop-up ads and malicious malware. It can also give you access to any country's version of Netflix or Disney Plus. I mentioned Disney Plus specifically because did you guys know that the entirety of Bleach is on Australian Disney Plus? And with Atlas, you, yes, you, can take advantage of Atlas's huge discount. You can get a 3-year subscription from $1.83 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Even better than that, if you use my link in the description below, you get an 85% discount for premium subscription. Snatch that deal while it's hot, and thank you so much Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video. I won't let you down. Alright, it's back to the sexy, scaly man. Jinbe immediately struck me as interesting, not just for the fact he's a fishman, but because he didn't really have the air of a pirate. After all, with Yosaku telling us ages ago that Jinbe was Arlong's former captain, and that Jinbe is the one who unleashed Arlong into the East Blue, what else were we meant to expect? Arlong is a violent, bloodthirsty, war-crazy fishman who wanted to wreak nothing but havoc and destruction. It was safe to assume for us at the time that Jinbe was a terrifying man himself. But chapters later, when we finally meet Jinbe, not just on his own, but with Ace, it comes as a shock. Because Jinbe's first lines especially hold a lot of weight, and his character introduction strikes a chord regarding the contrast of the man we expected him to be.
またこっぴどくやられてな親分よ。
体など痛うない。Aさん、痛いのは仁義を通せぬわしの心や。
It's not my flesh that hurts, it's my heart, because I'm not able to do what's right. From these words alone, we are blasted in the face by the kind of person Jinbe is. Not only is he not what we really expected him to be, but he holds a completely different manner compared to not only other pirates, but the 7 warlords as well. The warlords we'd met at this time were Mihawk, Crocodile, Maria, Kuma, and Boa. Technically Doflamingo as well, if you want to count that fiasco in Mocktown and his dumb little walk. But the warlords obviously are a corrupt lot. From Mihawk cutting down a whole ship because he was bored, to Crocodile trying to take over a country by starting a civil war, to Maria imprisoning hundreds to thousands of people by stealing their shadows. Jinbe sticks out like a big blue wart. His talk of doing what's right and his heart aching due to the war that's about to begin is unlike anything we've seen. Jinbe feels less like a pirate in these moments and more like a warrior, one that clearly has a lot of honor and his own sense of morality and justice that he follows, to the point he'd given up on the warlord title with it meaning nothing to him. A title that has a heavy meaning in One Piece's world regarding the power and status it grants a person. And we get this all from 2 whole pages. God, One Piece is fantastic at introductions. Continuing on from that, Jinbe explains why he'd rather die than have this war proceed, and talks of Whitebeard's fates and how he saved and protected Fishman Island by claiming it as his territory. And after telling us this story, Jinbe says, "Now that's power." With only a few lines of dialogue and a very quick briefing of Jinbe's connection to Whitebeard, we discover Jinbe does not see power as something so shallow. He does not believe power to be in the warlord title, nor does he believe it powerful to be a fear-mongering pirate, but he believes there is a pure power in protecting something. Very clever, considering the arc he was introduced in is centered completely around the protection of Ace, which went very well, of course. Yes, anyways, the lead up to Jinbe was pretty fantastic in itself. Not just with Arlong in Arlong Park, but with Sabaody being presented just before this. In Sabaody, we discovered just how fishmen are treated, with mermaids being hunted down and other fishmen being seen as lower scum compared to humans. This is all context needed upon understanding fishmen as a race, and is why, when we get to Jinbe, the fact he talks to Ace the way he does holds a lot of importance, especially with the request Ace asks of Jinbe, in hoping Jinbe will protect his little brother Luffy. Jinbe's answer is yet another good showing of his character. Jinbe explains he's not as charitable as he seems, and that he has to actually like Luffy to want to help him, even if he is Ace's family. There's a strong precaution in these words regarding how Jinbe acts and thinks, and there's especially especially a nobility in them. Unlike a character like Luffy, who, just because he likes someone, will do something for someone else. As we've seen time and time again, Jinbe picks and chooses who his kindness is directed towards, no matter the immediate connection. And considering what we've seen with fishmen and how humans treat them, this makes perfect sense. For all Jinbe knew, Luffy was a raging fishman racist. For all he knew, Luffy would have wanted nothing to do with fishmen, and possibly wouldn't even accept the help of a fishman. So why would Jinbe, with who he is and who he's been born as, immediately be charitable towards a human he's never met? Why would he offer protection and offer care to a random person of a race who's only oppressed his own? Of course Jinbe is a man who needs to judge on his own who deserves his care, and of course he must be cautious with the favors he gives and the people he follows. To be able to blindly give kindness seems easy, and it's something we could all provide in a perfect world, but the hard truth is there is a privilege behind it, which is what I believe these scenes are meant to show. It's what I believe Jinbe is meant to embody as a character in itself. Because after all, we are shown throughout the entirety of Marineford that Jinbe has an extremely kind heart. From saving Luffy multiple times, to wanting what's best for the world by stopping this war, to even befriending whale sharks. Jinbe even states he can't actually control these creatures the way mermaids can. He just showed kindness towards them, and so they help him as a friend. There's a sternness to Jinbe's kindness, one he's extremely wary of. And at this point in time, the only assumption we can make is because he's a fishman, which, as it is, feels to be a good enough answer. We know humans are the oppressors of fishmen, and one cannot afford to hold hands with their oppressors without a very heavy caution. Luckily for Luffy, he's electric in personality, and feels no bitterness nor resentment towards fishmen, even after his encounter with Arlong. So Jinbe immediately takes to him, and there's absolutely no one better than Jinbe to guide Luffy through this entire ordeal in Marineford. Marineford was exceptional at showing us not only bits and pieces of Jinbe we couldn't quite piece together yet, but the dichotomy between Luffy and Jinbe as characters. Anyone can look at these two and think, yeah, well, no duh, they're different. But the charm comes from the fact Luffy is on his own here. Due to this, Jinbe acts as the only stability Luffy has throughout this arc. Each Straw Hat does indeed reassure Luffy during different times. Zoro especially is a base Luffy needs as a captain. The only thing with Zoro is he can be extremely rough, and he's physically fantastic at providing support in battle. Zoro isn't exactly hot-headed, but he also doesn't make the smartest decisions at times. I wouldn't really say Zoro has the brain to match the brawn, nor do I believe he really thinks ahead about 90% of the time. There's been multiple times Zoro has acted on impulse, something that has saved his life before, but it leads to a conundrum here or there. The funniest example I can think of is the Water 7 train scene, where he's decided to let everything figure itself out after jumping over an iron fence. I'm saying all this because I want to show that Zoro does provide support to Luffy. A lot of it, especially during Water 7. He was great at telling Luffy what a captain should be. He kept Luffy's pride as a captain first, even if it turned him into the metaphorical bad guy of the situation. But he lacks maturity. He lacks both a worldly understanding and an emotional openness in the way Jinbe does. Which is why Jinbe being the one to console Luffy after Ace's death was just perfect. This man is exactly who Luffy needed. Everyone on the Straw Hat crew has experienced the death of a loved one in some way, shape or form. And everyone had their own ways to grieve. But a rampaging Luffy was extremely hard to watch. A Luffy who screamed and hurt himself due to his loss is something we've never experienced before. Personally, I'm unsure how each Straw Hat would have handled this. The situation would have no doubt been completely different with them there. But seeing Luffy in this way is disturbing nonetheless. And yet Jinbe, through it all, keeps his calm. Jinbe lets Luffy take it out on him if he wants, allows Luffy to rampage in ways that can help, and delivers a speech that is so powerful it rendered me to near tears.
失ったものばかり数えるな。ないものはない。お前にまだ残っておるものは何じゃ。
仲間がいるよ。
The statement that regret and guilt is consuming Luffy, that he can't dwell on what is lost and must remember what he has, is a really beautiful sentiment to me. Because not only is this exactly what Luffy needed to hear to help him remember his crew and desire to see them again, but it feels extremely personal for Jinbe. This is something that can only be said from one who's experienced such pain. This feels like a lesson Jinbe had learned in his own life and has had to fight through. And the strength Jinbe provides Luffy mentally shows just how needed of a character Jinbe is, both to this world and to Luffy. Looking back on it, it's kind of no duh that Jinbe was going to join the Straw Hats, because this was a pivotal moment in Luffy's story. In my opinion, this is one of the most important moments of development we see with Luffy, and the one who guided him through it all was Jinbe. But Jinbe, of course, does not just exist for Luffy's development. As I said previously, this scene and this conversation opens up a ton of questions. Jinbe said all of this from the heart, and there's an idea Jinbe's gone through such experiences himself. But we don't know what those experiences are. That is, until Fishman Island. And let me tell you, for an arc that feels very widely disliked by a significant amount of fans, it certainly holds the most hard-hitting stories and questions that messed me up. But Jinbe's story especially is harrowing in how it's presented and in contextualizing Jinbe as a character. Something that sticks out greatly with Jinbe, and a line I couldn't forget, is when Crocodile talks to him during Impel Down. Crocodile expresses his surprise at Jinbe being friendly, and mentions how he thought all fishmen were barbaric. Jinbe surprisingly replies with, "You're right, fishmen are barbaric." So what the hell does this mean? Well, with the flash of Arlong after that, we can get an idea. And we dig so much deeper with it upon receiving Jinbe's backstory hundreds of chapters later. In a shocking turn of events, it turns out Jinbe, at 30 years old, was extremely pessimistic and jaded. He saw no hope in becoming equals with humans, had no desire to live amongst humans, and especially couldn't see a world in which fishmen thrived on the surface. Not only that, he found pirates to be scum, which isn't unnatural considering we've gotten 2 other Straw Hats who were previously against pirates. 3, if you count little baby Frankie hating Odin and Roger's crew. Anyways, Jinbe worked for the royals of Fishman Island, serving under Queen Otohime and King Neptune. At this point in time, Arlong was his own pirate who terrorized humans, and Jinbe didn't feel strongly either way about Arlong's existence. In fact, Arlong and Jinbe originally both shared extremely similar views regarding humans, one just being more full of anger than the other. And we see these similarities when Jinbe and Arlong both join Fisher Tiger's crew. The man who was originally an explorer turned hero after freeing hundreds of slaves from the Celestial Dragons. Jinbe at this point realized there was a cause to be fought for, and especially realized there could be hope and strength in the world for fishmen through fishmen, which is in itself interesting, because we find what Fisher Tiger wants and what he desires in his quest as a pirate and with a crew is exactly what Otohime wanted. Otohime wanted freedom and liberation for the fishmen, and she wanted to do it through peaceful, bureaucratic means. Fisher Tiger also seeks that liberation, hence the sun seared unto himself and his crew, as a symbol of one day seeing the surface. But they went about it in completely different ways. Otohime trying to use her royal status and power as a means to join the world government, while Fisher Tiger became an outlaw with a more hands-on approach. But there was a similarity between them Jinbe couldn't quite understand at the time. This similarity was that fishmen, no matter the case, were not allowed to kill humans. Fisher Tiger was particularly adamant on this rule, and had to address both Arlong and Jinbe specifically due to them apparently being the most brutal ones. It's difficult to imagine Jinbe being so brutal in his early adult life, but the point here is Jinbe's hatred for humans ran deep. So deep he couldn't understand Fisher Tiger's reasoning with such a rule. All Jinbe knew was that humans were barbaric. He saw humans as a race of monsters who wanted nothing but to cause harm to and kill fishmen. So of course he'd be confused at his captain's logic. And at this point, the difference between past Jinbe and current day Jinbe are night and day. If anything, Jinbe feels as if he's about to become another Arlong. That is, until he meets a little human girl called Koala. Koala has a horrifying story of being enslaved when she was only a little girl. An empty smile stuck on her face in fear of being punished if she emoted or cried. This is the effect and trauma of being a slave shown to us in full blast, made terribly disturbing at the fact that this is only a child. Jinbe found this to be horrifying. His disgust of her situation prominent when asking her why she's smiling on a boat full of fishmen, considering humans don't typically smile around fishmen in Jinbe's experience. And we get this uncomfortable scene.
何しとるおい、違う
何があっても泣きませんから殺さないでください
Bro made Arlong flabbergasted. That's how you know her situation's messed up. Koala is a key part of Jinbe's story, due to Jinbe realizing the humans he hated so much were also vulnerable to the system they've been forced under. While the fishmen are indeed much more oppressed for their race and physical appearance, it's become clear to Jinbe through Koala that the powers that be will enslave and oppress anyone if they're of lower class or lacking in authority. It's also become clear to Jinbe in this time that humans didn't exactly hate fishmen. Not all of them anyways, but the majority of them were just terrified of fishmen. This was for a multitude of reasons, the main one being the propaganda pushed of who fishmen are, but also because the majority of people who met fishmen met the Arlong types. Is this fair on fishmen? No, of course not. Anyone with a brain knows the single few do not speak for the majority, but it's an understanding Jinbe needed. And it's with this Jinbe finally gets the point of Fisher Tiger's rule, to show humans that fishmen are not brutes towards humans the way humans are to them. Because while they cannot change the minds of their oppressors, of the world government and the celestial dragons, the few humans they meet can at least find a mercy in fishmen that they were not expecting. It's a very slow, very arguably unfair process for change, yet it's the legacy Fisher Tiger wants to leave. And when Koala is finally delivered back to her hometown, where Fisher Tiger is cornered and shot by aggressive marines, Fisher Tiger's last words are what affected Jinbe more than anything, because in this moment, in this cruel and unfair world, the fishman's kindness was used against them. Even Even though they protected and cared for this little girl, there was no reward given apart from an open execution against Fisher Tiger. And on his deathbed, this man still holds his values high. Even though Fisher Tiger refuses human blood, and even though he can't bring himself to owe anything to humans, he still doesn't want fishmen to hate them. He doesn't want his crew blaming humans, nor does he want his crew seeking revenge for him. And he shouts a line that must stick with Jinbe to this day. It's foolish to die and leave only hatred as a legacy. Fisher Tiger couldn't forgive humans, the race who oppressed and enslaved him. But despite it all, he doesn't want this cycle of hate to be continued. He doesn't want to hate humans. He doesn't want his fellow fishmen to hate humans. And he doesn't want his name and legacy to be synonymous with hate. Just like Otohime, Fisher Tiger wanted a world of peace. He wants a world where little girls like Koala can grow up and talk proudly about fishmen, to change the minds of anyone who hates fishmen. And Koala's existence is beautiful in itself, as we can see Fisher Tiger's legacy is continuing to this day. Koala not only loves fishmen but has picked up the art of fishman karate, becoming a human who will probably beat up anyone who hates fishmen. And I am so desperate for Koala and Jinbe to meet again because I will cry. We see where Jinbe's maturity has come from, and we see Jinbe's own experiences with grief and death. Jinbe is a man who is drowning in guilt and grief. From Fisher Tiger's death to Arlong's rampage, King Neptune even called Jinbe a man who holds too much burden. In fact, this guilt inside Jinbe is so great that he bows on his hands and knees to beg for forgiveness from Nami. To us, and also to Nami, Arlong's actions weren't exactly Jinbe's fault, but as Arlong's former captain, he feels he holds a responsibility for it. Despite Jinbe's assumptions, Nami accepts his apology with a smile, and we can see that guilt leaving Jinbe's body through his overflowing tears.
魚人だからって恨みはしないわ。だから私の人生に勝手に謝らないで。
なんちゅうもったいないことは。かたじけない。
This poor guy really has the world on his shoulders. From the Fisher Tiger story, we can see Jinbe tried to embody both Queen Otohime's and Fisher Tiger's ideals by becoming a warlord. As a pirate, he's still an outlaw, but as a warlord, he can work within the system. Jinbe did his very best to make the world a better place for fishmen from the inside. Wanted nothing more than for the world government to accept and respect fishmen, and saw the warlord title as a stepping stone. The only thing is, the second Jinbe questioned the government's decision, he was stripped of his title and thrown into a cell. It was at that moment Jinbe realized this simply wasn't a system that could be fixed from within, and even expresses to Luffy and crew that the roots of the world government's racism still runs deep. Jinbe understands that his existence and his being acts as a symbol for all fishmen. He understands how delicate any situation he's in is. Understands him saying one bad thing could have the fishmen as a whole looked down upon. And this has turned him into the honorable, stern man he's become. He puts his values and honor first, not just for himself, but for his fellow fishmen. And Fisher Tiger's words of refusing to leave a legacy of hate has followed Jinbe years into the future. To the point this bitter 30-year-old man has found a change in his life and has mellowed into someone who cares when he can. And this is why when Jinbe joins Luffy, it means a great deal to both his crew and himself. Because since becoming the captain of the Sun Pirates, since gaining that warlord Sword title and losing it, he has not had a selfish bone in his body. Jinbe constantly has been living for others. In his search for liberation of his fellow fishmen, he's abandoned a life for himself. And his former Sun Pirate crew have very well noticed that. Yet, thanks to Luffy, Jinbe has discovered a liberation amongst humans and fishmen. Jinbe's blood now courses through Luffy's veins, symbolizing the new era and connection between humans and fishmen. And it's given Jinbe a new hope the world government deprived him of. Because something I left out from the start, and a line of dialogue I loved from Jinbe, is when he says, "I've always believed in miracles and luck." And which character is not only probably the luckiest man in this world, but creates miracles by his own hand? Monkey D. Goddamn Luffy. For himself and for fishermen, Jinbe has been holding onto a miracle. He's watched his former captain die in front of him after offering a kindness, has been berated by the government and the world due to his mere existence, and he's still found a way to hold on to hope. Jinbe is an example of how a person can grow amidst their adulthood, that your views can mold and change with the impact of the people around you even as you've matured, and that change is not just caused by nor sought after by the younger generation. And in saying that, of course 30 is not an old age at all, but it's certainly an age where a person can be set in their ways if not given the chance to change. Through his experiences, Jinbe's realized all people want is to be treated with respect and with goodwill. Even as he faced an emperor, he stuck to these values by offering Big Mom a cup of sake with his leaving of the Big Mom pirates. And in my opinion, there's no man quite as honorable as Jinbe, which is why it was so satisfying to see him finally living for himself, and finally living a burden-free life upon joining back up with the Straw Hats and Wano. Truly nothing can outshine that big toothy grin. Nearly all his life, Jinbe has held onto the hopes of a miracle, and it's quite possible Luffy was the miracle he'd been waiting for, not just for fishmen, but for himself and his own life as well, with the honor of a warrior, and with a soul gentle and forgiving. It's no stretch to say Jinbe is one of the coolest Straw Hats to now exist, and I'm so happy to see him finally living for himself as a Straw Hat. And with that, thanks for watching. A lot of Jinbe's character and existence ties into the existence of Fishman Island itself, and I tried not to mold the arc with the character. I will definitely be making a Fishman Island arc video one day, so please keep an eye out for that. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this one. Jinbe is such a joy of a character, and his addition to the crew was so needed. Let me know what you think of this sexy fishman. Do you like him? Do you love him? Do you really love him? Has he connected with you personally in any way? Spill your heart out to me in the comments. Just a quick reminder that I do have a Patreon, and if you would like to support me there, I'd really appreciate it. However, I know not everyone can support me in that way, and watching and sharing these videos does more than you can imagine for me. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover, One Piece or otherwise, please let me know, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. See ya!